The United Arab Emirates is expected to make a statement later today about the British academic Matthew Hedges. It was announced on Wednesday that Mr. Hedges had been jailed for life on spying charges, but there are now suggestions of a breakthrough in the case. Well, I'm joined now by our correspondent Alistair Sanford here in the studio. We're getting an impression, Alistair, and tell me if this is right or wrong, that the mood music might be changing slightly and possibly in the favour of Matthew Hedges.
Yes, Isabel, I think there are certainly hopes that this can be resolved. How soon remains to be seen. Of course, on Wednesday we had outrage and shock at this life sentence issued to Matthew Hedges, and the Foreign Secretary Jeremy Hunt said if this wasn't resolved there would be serious diplomatic consequences. The tone has now changed. Last night Jeremy Hunt tweeted this. I think we can have a look. He said he'd seen Matthew Hedges' wife and also the ambassador and had had a constructive conversation with the foreign minister, and he goes on to say, "I believe and trust he's working hard to resolve the situation as soon as possible. We've a close partnership with the UAE which will help take things forward." Now, also, the Emirates have also said that they're determined to protect what they call an important strategic relationship with a key ally, and they hope to find an amicable solution. So certainly this is being seen as an olive branch from the Emirates. Several officials there are also stressing the rights of Matthew Hedges to appeal, and also the families have a right to appeal for presidential clemency. So certainly the tone is changing here.
So the tone might be changing, but the UAE has staunchly defended its position, hasn't it?
Yes, it issued a very long statement yesterday. Here it is from the Foreign Ministry. It goes on to more than one page. Let me just go through it, some of the points that are important. It says the judiciary is independent. It respects the rule of law. It's vital the government does not attempt to interfere in court cases. It defends the fact that the hearing was very brief, saying the substance had been decided earlier. It says Matthew Hedges was treated fairly. He was treated well in detention with medical and family visits. He had proper representation and translators, and it's not true that he was asked to sign documents he didn't understand. Now, some of that is contested. The family says he was in solitary confinement for 5.5 months and had no legal help. And also, human rights campaigners have said there is sometimes suspicion over these confessions that are pretty much forced in some cases, and the UN has highlighted shortcomings over due process. The statement goes on to say on the substance of the case that it was thoroughly investigated and there was compelling and powerful evidence against Matthew Hedges, and that these crimes are extremely serious, and we're talking about protecting national security. Now, they, of course, accuse him of spying. Matthew Hedges says he was innocent. He was just conducting research for his PhD, and that's backed up by his university.
But Britain and the UAE are partners. The UAE is an important partner for Britain. So do both sides need a breakthrough in this?
Yes, Jeremy Hunt said on Wednesday it's a key ally, and I think the fact they both need a resolution is implicit in both sides' statements. The UAE also talking about an important partnership. Some observers think that the essential message has been got across. This is a warning to academics. Back off when it comes to research on national security. Certainly the ties are very close. Trade rose by 12% last year, according to the Emirates. The UAE is the UK's largest export market in the Middle East. Close partnership on defence, with academics, of course, universities, and there's a backlash now from academics in the UK over this. Last but not least, more than 100,000 nationals British nationals live in the Emirates, and of course tourism is very important to the country.
Well, today has been dubbed Black Friday in the United States, with millions expected to hit the shops. But in France, protesters are attempting to paint the country yellow. The so-called yellow vest protesters are planning more mass demonstrations across the country. They're angry that the French president has introduced a planned carbon tax increase, helping to push up fuel prices. Last weekend, 2 people died in the protests. Well, let's go live now to Paris and speak to Euronews' Brian Carter. Good morning, Brian. So tell us, what can we expect today and over the weekend from these yellow vest protesters?
Good morning, Isabel. Well, as you said, the Yellow Vest protesters are planning to turn Black Friday into Yellow Friday by protesting at different shopping malls across France, which kind of shows you the evolution of the movement. Initially, they were blocking roads and oil refineries, but in the last few days, they've been blocking and protesting at tax offices, highway toll stations, and now shopping malls. So it shows you that what started as a protest against fuel has really morphed into a protest against the cost of living. And a lot of these protesters are people that are really struggling to make ends meet. But the difficulty of this movement is that it is leaderless and that it is divided. And this is shown also about the demonstration here on Saturday. Some people in the movement believe that it's important for many people to come to Paris for a big demonstration, for a big show of strength, while others in the Yellow Vest movement believe that it's more important to stay local and continue their action day there. They also say that it's too expensive for them to come to Paris, and they're also afraid of the violence. And they're not the only ones. Authorities here in France are on high alert because there are no clear indication of where the protesters will be on Saturday. 30,000 people are expected, and amongst them some hundreds of violent agitators. Authorization has been given to them to protest at the Champ de Mars, that is at the foot of the Eiffel Tower, but many of those protesters say they disagree with that location and they want to hit more symbolic places like the Élysée Palace.
Well, very briefly now, Brian, but the French President Emmanuel Macron is expected to announce some new measures. Could these be seen as a victory for the Gilets jaunes, the Yellow Vests?
In a way, yes. We're expecting Emmanuel Macron on Tuesday to announce new measures to make ecological transition more acceptable, more democratic. For example, by providing more state aids or discussing also the issue of fuel. But will it be enough to calm the protesters? We'll have to wait and see. What's sure is that this movement has shown that there's a big discontent with Emmanuel Macron, a president who's deeply unpopular here in France, and also showed a wide divide between rural France and urban France, and between the more well-off and the less well-off. Now, will they turn into a political actor of French political life? That we'll have to wait and see as well.
Now, a new Mars rover is starting to take shape at Airbus in the UK. The rover is a key component of the European Space Agency and Roscosmos' ExoMars mission, the first mission to get to the red planet to search for life. Well, Euronews is the first channel to have been given access to film the new specially built facility. Well, we're going to watch a report by our space correspondent Jeremy Wilkes in just a moment, and we'll be speaking to him right after.
Inside this Airbus facility in Stevenage near London is one of the cleanest clean rooms on the planet. It has to be spotless because when you're building a rover to look for life on Mars, you have to avoid taking signs of life from Earth with you by accident. Even the engineers who work on the machine are kept at a distance.
There's been a lot of different challenges, getting tools very clean, getting all of the ground support equipment very clean, and also this facility here is so that all the electronic engineers can work on the rover, but without having to go into that clean room facility because it's such a big deal to have to put all of the gear on to go in there.
Components and instruments are now arriving every week from across Europe as the team races to build the rover in time to be shipped to Russia next year. For the moment, the only part in place is a panel that will be in the center of the vehicle.
This small
panel that you can see over there is where all the electronics of the service module of the ExoMars rover will be built. Everything is assembled in this room, which was designed specifically for the ExoMars mission, and if there is life on Mars, I hope we find it with this mission.
Next door to the clean room is a testing ground for developing the rover's navigation system. ExoMars is the first mission to drill down up to 2 meters below the Martian surface to take samples. Some believe Mars was once home to life, or maybe even now.
I think it's unlikely to be sort of little green men at this stage. It's probably going to be bacteria, because we tend to find that in the most arid locations on Earth. It's the most hardy form of life we know. So it's fairly likely that that's the sort of life we're going to find below the surface.
We only have a few years to wait for the answer. ExoMars will launch in July 2020 and land in March 2021.
Well, as promised, Jeremy joins me in the studio now. Jeremy, this is so exciting. So do you think they're going to find life on Mars?
Well, you know, personally, I really hope they do. And of course, there's plenty of people there on this mission who really hope that's going to happen too. If you were to take a sample of the Mars experts that I speak to, imagine there's 5 of them in front of you. One would say, no, there's no life there. We're never going to find anything. 2 might say, well, maybe we'll find something that, you know, lived a long, long time ago. And 2 others might say, well, I think we've got a chance of finding something. Honestly, the community is very divided on this. So if you speak to the experts, as I say, nobody really knows, but they've got the right instruments on board. This is the first time, as you saw in the package, they're going to drill underground. So actually, the research that we're finding on Mars, it's a very surprising planet. We're beginning to find that there's more and more water ice there than we thought, particularly just below the surface, even close right down to the equator. We knew quite a long time ago that there was water near the poles, but now we also can see that there's water just below the surface near to the equator. So they believe that if they start to drill down, maybe just 2 meters, they might start to find something.
Well, we heard no little green men.
No.
But what sort of life?
No. There's nothing living on the surface. Let's be clear about that. It's far too harsh a radiation environment. But no, we're talking about, in best case scenario, very, very simple organisms, things like algae or bacteria. There's also, I think, really, a lot of the scientists believe that what they're going to be looking for, what they're trying to find, is kind of micro fossils. So they believe there was a good chance that there might have been life emerging on Mars 3 billion years ago, around about the same time it emerged on planet Earth, because the planets had a kind of very similar kind of a surface at that time with water and an atmosphere. All that disappeared on Mars, and Earth kept all of its atmosphere. So they think that maybe 3 billion years ago there was something there. So you've got to go and try and find these micro fossils. It's incredibly difficult to do. Of course, the ultimate plan will be to try and bring a sample back from Mars to the Earth, and there's a possible mission going to happen between ESA and NASA to do that. Again, really complicated. You've got to find the right sample, take it into orbit around Mars, and then bring it back to planet Earth in a pristine condition and be able to look at it in a laboratory. But this ExoMars rover is basically a little mini lab on wheels, so it can already do an awful lot of really important work. And you know, there has to be a little chance that they find something. I really hope so.
Amazing stuff. Thanks so much, Jeremy. Jeremy Wilkes, our space correspondent.